Hey there, it's Olivia-Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you the School Days book tag, which was created by the lovely Victoria from What Victoria Read. She tagged me as well, so I'm here to answer all of these questions. What you're really supposed to do is answer the set questions and then choose a subject and answer the question that pertains to that subject. But I am going to answer all of the questions because in school I was an overachiever and therefore I must overachieve in the School Days book tag. First, Belle, tell us a book that got you into reading, and I can't tell you because I've been reading since forever, since I can remember, so I don't remember the very first book that I ever read. Break time, which book have you most recently decided to take a break from or DNF'd? And that one for me was Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. I was liking it, I just wasn't loving it, and I was supposed to read it for class, so it did have a deadline to it, and once I missed the deadline because I was only halfway through, I just started the book that I needed to read for next week, so I just didn't get back to it yet. I do want to get back to it and finish it off, but it was just a case of I missed the time constraint by which I was supposed to read it, and then I had other things to read instead. And it went on pause, and it's been on pause since. Lunchtime, tell us your favourite book that features food. I love food, I love books that feature food, but a recent one that I read with food, well, fairly recent one that I read with food in it is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, and it's about a teen mother, and she is also very interested in the culinary arts, in being a chef, and she is such a talent with food, and I loved hearing about her cooking and how cooking is so soothing to her, but also what she was mixing and creating in the book. It sounded delicious. If I could eat a book, I would eat that one. Final Bell, which book have you most recently finished reading? And as of me filming this, it was Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend, which I finished literally this morning. This is a middle grade book and it's a lot of fun and very, very enjoyable, but it didn't blow me out of the water, which was a shame. Homework, what was the last non-fiction book you read? And the last non-fiction I read was Dear Reader by Cathy, Rentzenbrink, which is a book that is celebrating reading culture and talking about the way that books has been entwined in her life for a very long time, but it also is talking a lot about her work experience within the book industry as a bookseller, as a writer, as someone who works with people who are literate, and I really, really enjoyed this and recommend it. Staff Room is tell us about a book when you feel like you need to take a breath, and for this one I have Ariel by Sylvia Plath. So when I feel like I most need to take a breath and take a break, it usually is because I'm sad about something, and when I'm sad I go back and read poems from Ariel just because it is a sad poetry collection. It's a lot about these emotions, and I'm really someone who firmly believes in feeling the emotions that you're feeling and experiencing them, and through Ariel I just always feel seen in the sadness and know that there are words for it. And I've read this collection from back to front twice now, but I've also read many of these poems many more times than that because I just pick it up and read random poems. The first time I read this, I annotated every single poem, not only breaking down the poetry and, you know, in a literary way, but also breaking it down in terms of my emotions at that particular moment when I was reading it for the first time. And then years later, when I read it back to front the second time in 2020, I was reading the poem, reading my thoughts and feelings back when I first read it in 2018 or 2017, and then also adding more annotations of my emotions in 2020. So I know that whenever I feel down enough to read this back to front again, I'm going to have 2 layers of sad Olivia-Savannah emotions, plus a breakdown of the poetry, plus my new feelings to add onto it, and there might not be enough space on the page, but this is a very personal collection to me now, and it's going to continue to be that way whenever I need a bit of a breath. For English is to tell us about a book that you studied in school and one that you would want to put on the curriculum. So in school I'm going to take to mean as in secondary school, and in secondary school I read Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. We actually read 3 Shakespeare plays over the course of secondary school, so this was not the first one I read, this was the second one I ever read, but I really enjoyed it, especially because that teacher got us out of our seats in English class. We had toy swords for the scenes like Do You Bite Your Thumb at Me, Sir? And the fight scenes with Romeo and Tybalt, which was always fun, and it was just a lot of fun. We had the guys in dresses for certain scenes simply because that's how it would have been on stage, and it was such a fun experience of reading Romeo and Juliet, and I reread it 3 times now, so I've got a lot of different thoughts and feelings, but I will always remember that as such an enjoyable second introduction to Shakespeare, and then one that I would add onto the curriculum. I would not add this on to secondary school curriculum, but hey, I do English literature and creative writing, so I put this on a university curriculum, and that is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I thought this book was fantastic. I feel like it does so many good things with the time travel, but also with slavery and racism, and when I was reading this one, I could just see so many fine details that Butler has included and ways that you could dig deep into the themes, and I was just so sad that I wasn't studying this at any point in my university degree, because it would have been so fun to break down and discuss. So I bet it's on some curriculums out there, but should be on a lot more so that I could have studied it. I'm salty about this, can you tell? Maths is how do you rate your books, and maths has never been my strong point, okay? I hated maths and I had to take it all through secondary school, but how do I rate my books is a very large question that I can't cover in this video, because I change how I rate my books, and I also change how I rate my books depending on genre. I do not rate middle grade the same way that I rate young adult contemporary or how I rate classics. In fact, most recently the rating that I've changed is classics, and that's because I upped my rating system. It's easier for a classic to get 5 stars from me now, because I realized I was giving a lot of classics 4 stars when I read them, just because generally classics tend to be a little bit slow. However, those 4 stars that I was giving those classics, I was thinking about them way down the line, and months after reading them I would find discrete connections that I missed just while I was wrapped up in the experience that I only thought about later, and I could see the genius in these classics a few months after I read them. And then if I read them at that point a few months down the line, I know I would give it 5 stars. So I feel like I've upped it for it to be easier for them to get 5 stars, so my 4 stars has become a 5 stars, just because those books take more time for me to process than any of the other books I read, classics. So my ratings shift and change as I see the flaws in how I'm rating that particular genre, but each genre has its own rating system, in my mind at least, because each genre is different and needs to do different things to grab my interest. Like, I don't expect a thriller to do the same thing for me as I expect a middle grade novel, and that's very complex and it probably needs a whole video, but I don't even have the words yet, so we'll see. For science, the question is, which couple do you think has the best chemistry? I have a favourite ship of all time. You probably know this if you're on Instagram what the ship is, but I'm very careful to never say it's this and this person. I mostly just say their ship name, because it's kind of a spoiler, I guess. I don't think it should be, but maybe some people see it as a spoiler if they know what the ship is. So I'm just gonna hold up The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater, and the main character in The Dream Thieves has something to do with the ship. So if you know the series, you know who my ship is. I love them together so much. But the funniest thing is, when I first read The Raven Cycle and I could see the ship happening, I hated it and I didn't want it to happen. But I'll explain that more when we get to my Raven Cycle. Read it backwards, because I've got things to say, but they're full of spoilers, okay? So you have to wait. Geography is describe a book that has a very strong sense of setting and place, and in those Instagram questions of the day you always get where they're like, which world would you want to go into? Over the years, my answer still has not changed from the Shadowhunter world. So it's been a long time since I've read the Mortal Instruments, and it's been so many years since I've read these books, and I haven't been keeping up with the series. I haven't been reading the new ones, but I still would love to go to the Shadowhunter world because it sounds so cool. I would love to have runes all over my body that were temporary and disappeared over time, and I would love to have a Paravatai, or like whatever that's called. I would love to have that connection. I would love to go to the Downworlders and hang out with all of these different magical creatures. There's just so many creatures. There's vampires, which I love, there's werewolves, there's fae, everything is in this world, so I would love to go there if I possibly could. History, what historical fiction novels have you enjoyed? And I haven't been reading too much historical fiction lately, but I have read some, and I was recently thinking about Salt to the Sea by Ruta Septeys, and it still stands as one of my favourite historical fictions just because it enabled me to learn about the largest maritime tragedy that's ever occurred in history that I didn't actually know that much about before reading that book. But it did take me a little bit of time to get into it, but it was such an emotional journey, and I think it handled the multiple perspectives incredibly well. Religious studies is what is a book that you always come back to, and there could be no other answer for this except for the Twilight Saga by Stephenie Meyer. I've reread this one countless times, especially Twilight, the first book. I just reread it again and again and again and again and again, probably about every year. I don't think I'm going to keep reading it every year, but it's just so familiar to me. I know the story inside out. It's such a comfort. And whenever I can't really focus on reading because real life gets too much, I reread Twilight again. So for example, a time that I really value and remember reading this whole series is during my exams, because I didn't want to pick up a new book at all for the period of studying before the exams and during the exams, because I didn't want to get distracted by a book world that I loved, and I didn't want to not give a book a full focus because my brain was at max capacity for my IB exams. So I just started to reread Twilight, and it was great because I could stop and know what was going to happen next at any point. But it was also, it's such a capturing experience when you read Twilight that you can just delve into all the meme culture and all the videos and the films, and you can become fully immersed while still not needing to use too many of your brain cells on it and still being able to do your exams. So I feel like I can't even remember the trauma of studying for those exams much, simply because it's all overlaid with my love of Twilight, and that is a beautiful thing. PE, show us the biggest book on your TBR, and I didn't actually look for the very biggest book, but I'm just gonna say the Game of Thrones series. I've read the first one, really loved it, and I just haven't got back to the series, and all of the rest of them are very, very big, so biggest ones. Music is, which format do you think is the best for reading? And I wasn't entirely sure how to interpret this question, but I'm gonna say ebooks, because actually ebooks is the fastest format of my reading. I read faster than an audiobook in physical format, but I finish a book faster in ebook format than in physical format. Not sure why, but I just read faster with ebook. However, with the pandemic and spending a lot of time on screens, I just haven't been reading on my ebook much. I usually read on it while I travel a lot and commute time, but that doesn't exist at the moment. So I haven't been reading on my Kindle lately. Then for drama, the question is which book has the best ending? And I contemplated The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, but I settled on Noughts and Crosses by Malorie Blackman. This is a series that I read when I was an early teen, and it's still one of my favourite series to this day, and what it does is it flips racism. So in this world, the white people are the underdogs and the oppressed, and the black people are the oppressors, and it has a lot of interesting commentary on racism and discrimination because of doing this. And the ending of the first book, I remember it, and I will forever remember it, and it is very impactful, and I'm trying to use words that will not spoil the ending, but it is a defining moment in my teenage reading years, this ending. That's all I'm gonna say. Art is it says to show you 3 books which had the best covers, and for this one I had to choose, one of them I had to choose was my Complete Works of William Shakespeare, which is the Barnes & Noble leather-bound edition with gold edges, and I think the whole book is very beautiful. Even the inside, the print is kind of old stamped typewriter English, which makes me very incredibly happy, but I also think all the gold and Shakespeare being on the cover, it's beautiful. Ecstasy by Mary Sharratt, and this one is actually a historical fiction, and I was talking about I haven't read that many. Anyway, it's a historical fiction that has to deal with Gustav Mahler's wife, and it's about Alma Mahler and her experience with composing and giving up her love and her hobby and her creations for having a husband and being a mother, and how that affects her mental health. And I thought it was a fantastic book. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think the cover is beautiful because it's got the old art style and it's chaotic and colourful but also muted at the same time. Beautiful cover. And then last but not least, I had to choose Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I remember seeing this on somebody's anticipated releases list, and I saw that cover, and I don't do cover buys often, but I saw it and I thought, I need to know more about this book. I want to read this book. And I did, and I loved it. But I will never, ever, ever get tired of seeing a black girl on a cover, and I don't think I can think of an ugly cover with a black girl on the cover. It's just so beautiful to me, and it's so empowering, and it's saying this book features you, it's for you, it's about you, and that is always going to be a beautiful thing to me. I love seeing black girls on covers. I love seeing black people on covers. Give it to me, put it in my hand. The last question is modern foreign languages, a translated book that you would recommend, and I'm just going to go for one that I've read recently, and that's translated from Russian to English. It's a classic. It's Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I absolutely loved in this one, and it goes deeper into discussions about crime and punishment. Would you have believed that? And it does the thematic commentary so well that I was mind blown because I didn't expect to love it that much. And I think reading this one plus Ceremony by Leslie Marmon Silko back to back showed me and told me that I need to read more international classics, because they are very good. There you have it. Those are the answers for all of the questions in the school days book tag. Thank you so much to Victoria for creating such a wonderful tag. And yeah, please let me know in the comment section down below what was your favourite subject in school or your favourite book that you studied in school. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't you forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!